Welcome back, Sovereign Sister. Look, I promise you that you are not looking for more information. I promise you that you are not looking to fix yourself, your personality, your body. What you really are seeking and what is seeking you is the power of your neutral mind. That part of the mind that Kundalini Yoga calls literally the doorway to your soul. And the part of the mind, that aspect of who you are, that Jesus in A Course in Miracles says has to become ready for knowledge. Knowledge that already actually exists within you. Why? Well, because when the neutral mind is not leading your life, you're going to live in constant reaction, constant judgment of others and yourself. And when knowledge is not remembered because we have a neutral mind that is very unhealthy, what happens? Well, then we're constantly going to be living in doubt. We're constantly going to be second guessing, questioning, and using up our life force energy to judge, to look at good and bad instead of understanding darkness and light. So today we're going to be talking about the neutral mind from two perspectives. Because if you've been with us, you know that we've been on this series of the 10 energetic bodies of Kundalini Yoga. You're not just a physical body, there's 10 layers of you, and each aspect of these layers are absolutely impacted by chronic stress, trauma, war, genocide. They need to be kept healthy. And today we're looking at the third part of the aspects of your mind, which is the neutral mind. Now we're going to look at it from two perspectives, like we do in every Sovereign Sister Movement podcast: the science, the metaphysics, and the energy of Kundalini Yoga. The neutral mind being the aspect of the mind that literally ends generational patterns of reactivity. But we're also going to look at it from A Course in Miracles, Jesus Christ perspective, where some of you might know Jesus Christ as Joshua. And we're going to look at it as how the mind that actually becomes ready for knowledge and wisdom. Yeah, you got to get ready because it's not something you're seeking outside of yourself. It's something that is downloaded and you prepare your nervous system to actually access it. So, this episode is about how your nervous system regulation, how the brain, how consciousness, how they all come together. And we're not talking about self improvement, I promise you. This is not all about positive mindset or changing your mindset. We're talking about reclaiming sovereignty, body, mind, and spirit. 7 generations before you and 7 generations after you. So, welcome back, beautiful Sovereign Sister, to the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement Podcast. I am Veronica Barragan, trauma informed Kundalini Yoga therapist, finishing her studies at the Guru Ramdas Center for Medicine and Humanology, as I've been sharing my journey with all of you. Also, the founder with God of the Sovereign Sisterhood Sanctuary, a movement and sanctuary for the soul for first time generational cycle breakers like you, those beautiful women high priestesses that are rebuilding their inner sanctuaries by rewiring their nervous system and brain from patterns of generational trauma, many times perpetrated through colonization, through war, through genocide, so that we reclaim our sovereignty, not just for ourselves, but for 7 generations before and after us. And how do we do this? Well, we bridge the metaphysical, the science, and the energetics of Kundalini Yoga therapy. And we also combine it with the spiritual wisdom and knowledge of Jesus Christ in A Course in Miracles to bring healing at the level of the mind. We look at body, mind, and spirit, and we take a holistic approach to go beyond even generational healing to come into union with God. God herself experiencing herself through us. We're not God, but God is absolutely experiencing herself through you. So, welcome and thank you so much for being here. If these podcast episodes are resonating and if they're really opening up your consciousness to your own inner knowing, thank you so much for hitting that like button. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for tagging other sisters to come join us in this movement of sovereignty. So, again, giving you a moment right now to maybe grab some coffee, if you like to grab some tea, because we're going to geek out together. First, at the energetics and science of what I'm talking about today, because the thing is if we're taught these things since we were little girls, we would absolutely be powerful beyond potential, but it's never too late. It doesn't matter how old you are. The good news is that the brain, the nervous system can absolutely be healed, transformed, and re-educated. So to begin with the neutral mind, I actually would like to take the approach of talking first about the brain, because if you can understand the brain's functionality, you can differentiate between the brain's purpose and how the mind actually works. And knowing that will empower you to then not be a slave to your mind, but to actually be able to use the mind as an incredible tool for materializing and co-creating this beautiful thing we call reality. Because if we don't know this knowledge or we don't remember it, then we're slaves to the mind, and then we just believe we're unlucky, or we're actually operating from a place of trauma, a place of illusion of separation from God. And this is why we need to heal at the level of the mind, and this is why the brain discussion is absolutely necessary. So, first and foremost, remembering and reminding you all that the brain is an organ. Okay, the brain is an organ and it runs on electrical signals. It's going to receive input from your senses, but the senses are not created in the brain, they're created in the mind, because the mind offers perception, it gives meaning to things. And that's where the brain then receives input from your senses. And for a first time generational cycle breaker, this is important, because if you understand this, you understand that the brain then predicts what is happening. It's basically just programmed. And based on that programming, it's kind of like AI, it's a pattern recognition. And based on that pattern recognition, it is going to create a signal that is then going to print this. Now, your brain is more advanced technology than artificial intelligence. They're trying to lie to us and tell us the opposite. The problem here is most of us have not rewired our brain, and our nervous system hasn't been regulated, so it doesn't work like advanced technology. It's operating unconsciously under some kind of program. And that's why we have to also understand that the brain is not going to record reality ever. It builds a model of it. The mind is the meaning maker. The mind uses memory, conditioning. The mind uses past experience to interpret what the brain is going to then predict. So the mind constructs your perception. And that's important, because if you understand that, then you also understand what consciousness is. And this is, for a long time, scientists completely messed this up. And I don't know if they did this on purpose so that you wouldn't understand how powerful you are, or if they truly did not discover this. But scientists like neuroscientists like Jacobo Greenberg, you all know that I'm a big fan of his work. He's a famous neuroscientist who disappeared mysteriously, by the way, because he came up with this synergic theory that says that we're always connected to this quantum field of energy, which is God, and that our brain sends signals which then prints this reality that you're experiencing. But most of us are so unconscious. Why? Well, when we talk about consciousness, you'll be able to understand why. Well, because consciousness is related to your nervous system. Consciousness is awareness. So consciousness is capacity. And if your nervous system, let's say you've been through a lot of trauma, you've lived under chronic stress, let's say that, dysfunctional family, you know how so common, right? So then what happens is your nervous system gets hijacked into fight and flight. So that means you're constantly running adrenaline and cortisol through your system unconsciously. That means that it is creating a very narrow view of how you see life, mind. Remember, we talked about mind and the perception? So you are seeing the world, when your nervous system is dysregulated, only through the patterns of your ancestors. And I wish they were all the patterns of light and gifts, and because your ancestors didn't just give you trauma, there's a lot of gifts, right? But if your nervous system is hijacked by adrenaline and cortisol, the narrow view is not of your ancestral gifts. It is only of the ancestral trauma. And that is why consciousness is capacity. When you practice Kundalini Yoga meditation, you regulate your nervous system. What happens? What happens is your capacity to confront and face life widens, because now you're not just looking through like very narrow view. You have like an eagle's eye a bird's eye view of life, and you can see the solution, not just the problem. That's why consciousness is capacity. It is the space in which perception can actually be seen. It is the awareness that notices thoughts instead of becoming them. That's the problem when we've lived under chronic stress with no meditation practice, no changing of our nervous system and brain. Then what is really happening is that we lack awareness because, like I explained, your awareness is very narrow. And if you lack awareness, you're not even conscious that you're having the same thoughts. Most people, 95% of the day, they're running on the same thought and same emotion, which then turns into their personality. So if you're not aware, then you're going to think you are your emotions, and you're not your emotions. Your perceptions are creating your emotions, and you're also not your perceptions. So the mind starts to build the story. Consciousness becomes the space that can question the story, nervous system. And that's where the neutral mind enters. So remember the last two podcast episodes. If you missed it, go check it out. Here on my podcast, we talked about the negative mind and the positive mind. There's nothing negative about the negative mind, and positive mind is not positive thinking. You have a mind, and there's three aspects of the mind. Go check out positive and neutral mind so they can better understand the entirety of the mind. Today we're talking about the neutral mind. Now, here's where the neutral mind enters. Now that you know about the brain, the nervous system, and consciousness, we have to understand that the neutral mind is an aspect of the three aspects of the mind. Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini Yoga from the east to the west, explained that we have the negative mind, which protects and discerns when it's healthy. If it's not healthy, then it's paranoid and very worried all the time. The positive mind helps us expand. It's faith. But when it's unhealthy, it is gullible. When we don't take out the trash, when we don't meditate. Then now we're here at the neutral mind together. What is the neutral mind? It is coherence. It is not perception. It does not judge. It knows. It is knowledge. It is wisdom, and it can decide from that presence. So the neutral mind, what Yogi Bhajan said, is the doorway to your soul. Because think about it, the neutral mind, you've gone beyond polarity of the good and the bad. There is darkness and light. A lot of cycle breakers, sadly, they think that they're bad. And because they think they're bad, they're judging themselves. And if you judge yourself, you're also very judgmental of others. And you're wasting energy. People absolutely do things in darkness and light, but you don't have to make it about yourself. When we have a dysregulated nervous system, we see people doing dark things, and then that ruins our life, our day. You could use your sword, do what you got to do to bring the truth out or whatever, but you don't have to absorb that person's energy because an unhealthy neutral mind judges the person. You don't have to judge the person, and you can still stop the person from harming other people. Big difference. So the neutral mind becomes a doorway to your soul because you've gone beyond polarity of good and bad. You're no longer judgmental, not for yourself or for others or God. And this is why we have to develop the neutral mind through meditation. Just the way we have to develop it through meditation, the positive and negative minds, same thing with the neutral mind. And there are specific meditations and kriyas that do this. In fact, I'm going to share with you one today for the neutral mind. Because when the neutral mind is developed, when you practice these meditations, then you're going to act in wisdom, not reaction. The neutral mind actually does not panic, even if you're confronted by a challenging situation like you need to get a divorce or you need to fire someone or it's just a very uncomfortable conversation. It's not going to panic. It's not going to judge. It's not going to waste energy. It's going to be present because it's not rushing ever. And then you better believe it does not collapse, a healthy neutral mind. Why? Because you're not absorbing people's emotions. You're not making it about yourself. If someone attacks or there's perception of attack like we talked about in our lives on TikTok, if you missed them, make sure you join us over there. Then basically when you're judging, when somebody attacks, it's not really that they're attacking, they're actually calling you out. They're calling you out for help. As much as we want to make it about ourselves, it really isn't. It's about them and them being in pain. So you don't emotional intelligence is not making it about yourself and dealing with things as they are. So the neutral mind can hold both sides of darkness and light and still remain steady. Because when the neutral mind is strong, you pause before speaking. And let me tell you something, communication is listening. If you're a good listener, you're a great communicator. And your breath, you are paying attention to your breath before you react. That's a positive neutral mind, or I would say a healthy neutral mind. You're also responding instead of defending, not reacting or defending. The highest form of emotional intelligence is, would you rather be right or would you rather be at peace? And think of it as a CEO for your company. I'm just giving you that example. The problem comes, how is it going to serve you if you're going to go try to find someone to blame? You're going to waste energy instead of just being solution oriented. But we all look for someone to blame because our neutral mind is unhealthy, because it's easier for us to judge. It's easier for us to say, God, look what he or she did, so you don't have to look at what I did. It's wild. I know. So we're constantly defending because we believe we're being attacked. No one attacks you. They're attacking themselves and they're crying out for help. You don't have to be the one that saves them or helps them, but do not make this about yourself and then say, this happened because I'm unworthy or unlovable. It really is not. And this is sovereignty. Generational trauma patterns, however, weaken this. Absolutely. Because trauma does not just create emotional pain like sadness or grief, it's going to change the brain, especially if there was dysfunction, chronic stress, fighting. Grew up with a mother who was depressed, especially between the ages of 0 to 7, when your brain is still developing. But even afterwards, like let's say somebody in your family transitioned and your mother was grieving and she still hasn't fully grieved. Well, that's going to change your brain and that's going to change the lineage's brain. Because when a child grows up in stress, the amygdala, which is this almond part of your brain, is going to be very reactive. And the insula is going to scan for a lot of danger. That's hypervigilance. The brain marks threat as normal, as important. I got to go look out for it. This is called the salience network, actually, where the brain learns to decide what matters to it. And again, it's not based on what is good for the brain, it's based on patterns. So if your lineage lived in survival, your brain learned that danger matters most, that life is dangerous. So if it's dangerous, I'm constantly going to be scanning for danger. And if you're constantly scanning for danger, it literally becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So then you go into a neutral situation where you're not reactive. Guess what? Your brain's gonna be like, this is unsafe. I gotta add a reaction. I gotta add some commotion to the emotion because I don't like peace, or I'm not used to being at peace. And when that happens, your hormone levels go completely out of whack. Your cortisol is going to rise, your heart increase rate increases, blood flow shifts away from this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which actually regulates emotions, the part that actually helps you think clearly. It's going to shift away from there. So this is why we lose access to discernment. And this is why you can know better later, but not in the moment. It's not a character flaw, I promise you. It's literally nervous system and brain conditioning. But there are solutions for this because the neutral mind requires regulation in the nervous system. And regulation is supported within the nervous system by the vagus nerve, which is today I'm going to share with you this meditation that you can actually do for the practice for the neutral mind that supports the vagus nerve in a very beautiful way. What is the vagus nerve? You hear me talk a lot about the nervous system, but the vagus nerve is the most important aspect of the nervous system because the vagus nerve runs from all the way from the brainstem, all the way through the heart, all the way through the lungs, and it does so much. It helps slow the heart down, it helps steady your breath, it signals safety. But here's the thing, when the vagus nerve is very reactive, because of chronic stress due to trauma. And you know what happens after long periods of chronic stress and trauma? It turns into complex post traumatic stress. So when that happens, the vagus nerve, the prefrontal cortex is going to stay online. constantly searching for the next bad thing to happen. So you're with the vagus nerve, you want to make it healthy and active. You have to tone it. And you when you tone it is you do that through meditation, through Kundalini Yoga, breathing and mantra, right? That is then going to change the prefrontal cortex so that the prefrontal cortex says we're not in danger, by the way, and I can stay present. I have prana moving through me so I can deal with whatever is in front of me, which is why then you can think clearly or you can make better decisions. When your vagus nerve is lived under chronic stress for a long time, you're going to fight, you're going to flee, you're going to freeze. And the neutral mind is like, that's a collapse of the neutral mind. So you get into what? Judgment mode. You get into a complete polarity, the good and the bad, rumination. You literally just have adrenaline and cortisol moving through your system so quickly that you don't feel safe in your body and you're very reactive. That's the neutral mind collapsing. So in Kundalini Yoga, we train the neutral mind through breath, through meditation, through mantra. And there are actually specific meditations that the yogis gave us for specifically this aspect of the mind. And it's not to suppress emotion, it's to build capacity, which is why in many meditations, you might be crying, screaming, enraged. That's all part of the journey. These are emotions that have been stuck in the body because the body keeps score of emotions that are now, because of the prana, the movement of your body, now you can release that. And there's one particular meditation in Kundalini Yoga that we use specifically for the neutral mind. And it's actually very simple to practice. However, it might feel very like confrontational where you can't even sit still, where you might be moving your body a lot around, where you feel like you'll do it for 2 days and then you quit. Guess what? That's normal. It's so normal. When I first started practicing meditation, Kundalini Yoga, I couldn't sit still. I was like moving around a lot. It just felt like I was like a bad meditator. When little did I knew that it was part of the re-education of my nervous system. So even though this sounds simple to do, like just sit on a chair, sit on the mat, for many of us is we can create relaxation induced anxiety, which is a real thing. To tell someone to try to relax, their mind is like, are you kidding? Red flag, danger, danger. Brain is like, danger, danger. So it creates all this cortisol and adrenaline, and then they get more anxious just from being told that, which is why we take a different approach inside the community. Sovereign Sisters Sanctuary, everything's invitational. You meet yourself where you're at. You have to build safety in the nervous system and brain first before you increase capacity. And that's a natural process for all of us. So this meditation, you can sit on a chair, you can sit on the floor. The thing with the meditation is you're using a mudra, which is the position of your hands. And the way you're resting the hands is the right hand over the left hand, and you're just allowing the thumbs to touch each other, and you're just bringing that right to your lap. That's it. That you're just bringing that mudra to lap. The way we position our hands with mudra, it channels energy in a specific way. You are meridians. Next week, in the next episode of the Sovereign Movement Podcast, I'm gonna be talking about the physical body and your meridian lines. And your meridian lines are like rivers where energy runs through. So every position, the way you position your hands, the way you breathe, with the mantra you're chanting is adding prana to the river so that the emotions can move through the river. Otherwise, it gets stagnant, and then you know what happens. There's a cloggage, right? And that's disease. But with this meditation, you're just sitting in the chair on the floor, right hand over the left hand. You're sitting up straight and your hands resting here. You can close your eyes if it feels safe for you. If it doesn't feel safe, keep them open and just focus at the front of the room. And what you're doing, if your eyes are closed, you can bring that gaze to the brow point, middle, and you're just breathing in and out through your nose, but you're mentally vibrating to yourself, Wa He Guru, Wa He Guru. Wahe Guru. And Wahe Guru means the exaltation of the divine from darkness to light. That's what Wahe Guru means. So Wahe Guru, repeating that to yourself. You're not saying it out loud. You're just mentally vibrating it. You're going from darkness to light. And the breath, you just allow the breath to become natural through the nose. slowing it down. And guess what this is doing? Very quickly stimulating your vagus nerve that we just talked about. Very quickly, it's bringing activation in the frontal brain regions. And this has been proven scientifically too. And also repeating the meditation. That's why repeating the meditation for 40 days is the ultimate. 21 days to 40 days is key to start changing the brain matter. But repeating it is going to reduce your rumination loops. In fact, the more that I chant, the more that I practice, when those rumination loops come, that's the awareness. It's like the mantra stops it right there. And that's powerful because then you don't become reactive. And it's in that reaction that the patterns continue. If you respond, the pattern ends. And that's why mantra is so powerful and being like, like a hamster wheel, that's you 95% of the day with all these thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Like mantra is like you're throwing like a wrench in the wheel and now it's like stopping. So you don't keep going down you don't keep going around this hamster wheel. So when you're actually practicing this meditation, what you're doing is the nervous system is shifting from survival to coherence. And that's what I was saying by re-education of the nervous system. Coherence is your thoughts, feelings, and emotions and actions match. And that's why you're materializing, co-creating with God in the physical. And the beautiful part about this meditation is that spiritually, the inner witness is going to be strengthened. So that observer. And it's not about like becoming blank, not having thoughts, emotions, or feelings, like going into a coma. It's just about becoming still for whatever that means to you. Just about you attempting to re-educate the nervous system, even if your body's moving the whole time. And it's important to understand this even from a spiritual perspective because your outer world will not change if the inner world doesn't change first. And that's why, in order for us to understand the neutral mind, we absolutely have to look at it from the lens of spirituality. And we have to do that, we can do that with the teachings of Jesus Christ and of course a miracles perspective. Because when you look at it from Jesus Christ's perspective, the neutral mind is only readiness. That's it. It's like, and when you meditate, when you practice Kundalini Yoga meditation and you devote yourself to the teachings of A Course in Miracles or Jesus Christ or whatever scripture you enjoy, what you're doing is you're getting your temple ready, getting your sanctuary ready. Ready for what? Well, we're all here to accept the atonement, to become enlightened, nirvana, satori, whatever that word you like to use. Believe it or not, all of us are here for that. It might take you a few 100,000 lifetimes, but that's what you're here for. And that's what yoga is. It's preparing the sanctuary, the temple for that. It's readiness is you being able to download knowledge because knowledge is all the knowledge you'll ever need or anything, all the mysteries of the world are already inside of you, but you have to access them. And the way you access them is download them. And the way you download them is by getting ready. So you get the mind ready. Jesus in A Course in Miracles makes something very clear that perception is not knowledge. Perception is interpretation, and that's an unhealed, untrained mind. And perception is going to require you to be separate from God, separate from me and you, your brothers and sisters. And that's the biggest illusion because we're not separate. And also, perception requires separation of right and wrong, of past and future. When you take your last breath, you're going to see, and you can see this without you taking your last breath like I did, how it all comes together, all the timelines. Like there really is no cyclical time. And perception is always going to contain doubt. Knowledge does not. That's a healthy neutral mind. Unhealthy neutral mind, perception and judgment. Healthy neutral mind, knowledge, wisdom, coherence, presence, because knowledge is direct knowing. Jesus Christ was gnosis. He was Gnostic. The Gnostics taught direct experience. That's what gnosis means. It's a direct experience of the divine. So knowledge is certainty. It's union with God, no separation. And you know what? Knowledge cannot be learned. Right now, you're not even learning anything. You're remembering. I'm activating certain cells, certain memories within your biofield. And that's why these things, when truth is the truth, it resonates. You can feel it in your body, you can feel it in your mind, You can feel it in your spirit. And that's what Jesus says the entire goal of life and the course and yoga is. It's readiness for knowledge. That's it. And this is very important because the neutral mind actually makes you ready for that knowledge. Because with the neutral mind, you've gone beyond good and bad. And when perception is no longer there, the meaning of this was bad that you've been giving to things, that means that it's no longer distorted by fear. And then what does that mean? That knowledge is never going to be blocked from you again. And so, knowledge, very important. It's not a thought, it is awareness without distortion. In fact, wisdom is knowledge applied inside of perception. I'm going to say that again. Wisdom is knowledge applied inside of perception, meaning you have shifted your perceptions. Wahe Guru means from the darkness to the light. So knowledge lives at the level of consciousness. So that means that in order for you to download consciousness, knowledge, your nervous system has to be regulated. And that's how then you have a healthy, neutral mind that stops judging. Wisdom is going to show up in how you choose. And you cannot access knowledge through panic. A lot of women struggle with allowing themselves to receive. It's because the nervous system is so hijacked. It doesn't feel safe in receiving because it's learned to live under survival. And guess what? Certainty is sovereignty, conviction, faith, but it is a nervous system regulation state. And that's why think about it when we connect both teachings. When you look at it from the Kundalini Yoga perspective, training the nervous system, rewiring the brain so that the neutral mind can function. And then you look at it from A Course in Miracles, Jesus Christ perspective, teaching us that when perception is no longer distorted, that's why the spiritual psychotherapy of A Course in Miracles exists. It's spiritual psychotherapy on steroids that shifts your perception. It's a form of shadow work, but it's not going to remind you of all your shadows. In fact, it's going to trigger the shadows by reminding you of your light. And because you're reminded of that knowledge, perception won't be needed and it won't be distorted. Knowledge is remembered. So you're readying the sanctuary for that, your temple. They're not separate things. Knowledge and wisdom, they train the system, but so does perception and trauma. One explains what becomes available when the system is ready. Regulation expands consciousness. Expanded consciousness allows remembrance. Remembrance then becomes wisdom. This is generational healing versus the other, which is coping, managing systems, reclaiming sovereign clarity, but not ever doing it fully. We are doing this work 7 generations before and after us. And that's why it has to be at the level of the mind. That's why knowledge is not something you earn. It's something you remember and download through the brain and nervous system. Because ultimately, you're not too emotional. You're not even behind. You're carrying nervous system and brain patterns that were never resolved, that are creating the illusion of separation, that are causing you to be very judgmental of self and others. And that's why I'm giving you permission to change your nervous system, to regulate your nervous system through Kundalini Yoga meditation, through A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy. You have permission to also rest and pause. You have permission to remember knowledge instead of living in doubt, to live in conviction. And it's not selfish. This is literally lineage repair because your ancestors perhaps could not even fathom healing themselves because they felt selfish. They had to survive. They had to take care of the children. They had to take care of all the problems around them, right? So that's why a lot of us become very loyal to this story of trauma. But when we practice these meditations, especially of Kundalini Yoga, that impact the neutral mind, you're gonna go beyond judgment and you're going to come into neutrality. Darkness and light, you recognize it, but you don't absorb it. You don't absorb the darkness. You can absorb the light for sure, right? So the neutral mind is literally a yogi, one that's no longer reactive and one that's no longer judgment, one that's no longer governed by duality, the good and the bad. And that's why today we talked about these very important things, the difference between the brain, the mind, and consciousness. We looked at how trauma reshapes perception, which is comes from the mind. We looked at why the neutral mind collapses under stress. We talked about the vagus nerve and how it supports discernment, true discernment, not paranoia or fear, right? We also looked at how uh, the neutral mind collapses under stress without us taking care of us, how the vagus nerve supports discernment, not paranoia, how meditation, Kundalini Yoga meditation, rebuilds regulation in the nervous system, how A Course in Miracles, Jesus Christ says that definition of knowledge is gnosis, it's us knowing God is within us, and the difference between perception and certainty. Why? Because knowledge is wisdom applied. That's what knowledge is. Wisdom is applied knowledge. That's all that it is. So the neutral mind is your key to ending reactivity, which keeps the pattern going. When you practice these meditations specific to the neutral mind, when you understand knowledge through the lens of Jesus Christ, awareness expands, and then awareness is going to allow knowledge to be remembered. So think of wisdom as knowledge that is lived. And that's how sovereignty is embodied. We're not just like talking, oh, it sounds like something airy fairy that can't be real. We embody sovereignty by downloading the knowledge, which means you change the nervous system and brain, which means you take out the garbage from the mind through meditation. So there's a lot of things that we covered here today, but overall, the neutral mind is your superpower. And we practice meditation so that we are no longer a slave of the mind. And instead, we can use, especially the neutral mind, as our highest ally, as a partner, as an ability to discern and to no longer judge. Because ultimately, you're here to go beyond the polarities of good and bad and understand yourself as the highest expression of God. God herself experiencing herself through you. So if this shifted anything inside of you, that is readiness. You're ready, which means you can join us also inside the Sovereign Sisterhood Sanctuary, where we train this all the time, daily. Neutrality becomes natural and knowledge becomes lived through the teachings of Kundalini Yoga therapy and A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy. The information to join us at the Sovereign Sisterhood Sanctuary for disrupting patterns of generational trauma 7 generations before and after you is below. Check it out. Look at all of our different tiers, meditate on them, come back to the podcast, ask me questions, and let me know how I can assist you. But this is a pivotal time for humanity and us really understanding how the mind works. Not only that, but having the tools to activate it will become our biggest asset and our biggest flex because the spiritual warrior has emerged and we are who our ancestors prayed for. So thank you all so much for being here. Information to join the sanctuary is below. Thank you so much for liking this podcast episode. Thank you for sharing with others. Thank you for sharing it with beautiful community members in your community, sisters who are ready to heal themselves and 7 generations before and after us. I will see you all again next week. We're going to be talking about the physical body and generational healing. And you're going to understand the physical body in a way that you've never understood the physical body, energetically and spiritually. So I hope to see you next week here at the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement Podcast.